Okay, so we're here with a new episode of Live with Greg. How do you want to be, I should ask this earlier, like how would you like to be addressed since this is a public forum?
Like in terms of my name?
Right.
Or, Sequoia is fine.
Is Q okay?
Q's great.
Really?
Yeah, Q's great. That's the nickname I've taken on, like, in a greater sphere. Sometimes I sign my art as Q. I spell it as in, like, queuing, Q-U-E-U-E, but just to, like, stretch it out a little bit, but Q's great.
In the Q.
Yeah.
All right.
In the Q. Yeah.
What about my personal pet name for you?
Yeah.
Quality?
Great. Yeah. Great.
All right, so I'm here with Q, Quality. New episode of Live with Greg.
I've always read it as live.
You know, I kind of like that twisted element about it.
It's an ambiguous. It's appropriately ambiguous.
Yeah.
But I always thought that it was like, oh, we're broadcasting now, and it's happening in real time. This is being uploaded as we're speaking, you know.
Streaming.
I also have no idea how any of this works, so... Like, I made my first PowerPoint in my entire life 2 days ago.
Did you share it with your mom?
I didn't, but I made it in Google Documents, so it might be a betrayal to her product line. I don't know.
Does Adobe have something that's the equivalent of PowerPoint? Yeah. Oh, they've got that new thing. I love.
They've got the PowerPoint.
No, Microsoft has the PowerPoint. Okay.
See, this is how much I know about technology.
That's all right.
Programming, you know.
It's all like if did it do what you wanted to do?
Yeah, it did. It was a slideshow. I probably could have just made a slideshow. Yeah, I don't know. Originally I was like, I'm just gonna print out some pictures and put them on the blackboard and point at them when I want people to look at a specific image, because that's how technologically deficient I am. But then my professor showed me how to download images into a PowerPoint through Google PowerPoint. So it's like, okay, it's probably time. Like, I am however many years into a college education at this point, I should probably know how to make a PowerPoint. And here we are.
All right.
I have one useful skill that's coming out of this whole experience, so we've done it.
I think you'll have more than one useful skill.
I hope so.
I hope so too. Yeah. What's your major you're going for?
I'm double majoring in studio art and art history.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. Art history is, it started out as a little bit of a fallback because, you know, I mean, the whole starving artist trope, and I've just heard my entire life, like, don't get a degree in studio art, don't become an artist, you won't succeed, it's gonna be really hard, artists never work, and like, you know, I'm still gonna do it, but art history was also kind of like, this is a way to get into like museum work, like working with archaeologists, you know, getting more, like, because it's easier to get teaching jobs if you have a background in art history, as a studio artist, because you have like theory to back up your practice, kind of a thing. But I also, academics, the whole politics of academia. Yeah. And I love art history. I mean, it's also out of a personal desire to have theory to back up my work, so this is a good place to start.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you see that? Do you watch any Netflix stuff?
Some, yeah.
Did you see that stand-up routine by the woman from Tasmania, Nanette?
No.
It's really powerful.
I've had it recommended to me a couple of times. I've also been told that it's like kind of heartbreaking. So I've been like we'll save this for a day when I'm in a really good mood and I want something to just bring me down a couple notches. So, yeah.
Her ending line, it was hard for me to watch. I turned it off once because the white man gets it pretty good. Right between the eyes. Right, amen. And but her last line, what she closes with, is so beautiful and so powerful and uplifting and transformative. It's worth the pain one might experience in watching it, because it's a painful piece. But she's an art history person. She has a degree in art history.
Okay.
And art history plays a big part in the story she's telling, along with other elements of sexuality and gender and stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, pick a day where you're breathing. You're not underwater. Although like I said, that last minute, man, is like, it's worth it all.
Just like puts a Band-Aid on.
That's not a Band-Aid. No, it's more like I turned the oven up to high, and this is why. I believe in the experience of the oven. I think there's power in burning off that. Like, that which burns away was not of my spirit anyway.
Yeah. I like that, and I like the idea that kind of invokes of like trauma therapy. Like when I was getting this tattoo done, I was talking to my artist about like controlled trauma as a therapy, because I was going to get this and then I was going to go ride roller coasters with my friends, and like having a controlled traumatic experience where you think you're going to die, and like, you know, you have to kind of confront that you like volunteered for this experience, and you like, this is voluntary harm and pain being inflicted on your body, and like, you paid for this and you paid a lot of money to have this experience, but that like that trauma helps you like ground back into reality and like confront, you know, the just everyday life, and helps you like it gives you tools to deal with like true trauma and trauma that you didn't volunteer for, but like it kind of helps you parcel out like what is worth feeling hurt over, and what is worth like pain that is worth focusing on, versus like pain that we can let go of easily. Like, it helps kind of center everything around reality. If you have these experiences of pain that you're like, I'm experiencing this intentionally, and I'm going into it like prepared to experience it, which is like what you do every time you go in to get a tattoo. You like know it's gonna hurt, and you know it's gonna be great afterwards. So you have to like have that talk with yourself, or at least I do. I'm sure there are people who just hate the whole experience, or people who love the whole experience. So, you know, yeah.
I imagine people who hate the whole experience do it once.
I don't know. My mom has 2 tattoos and she hates it.
Really?
But she also only has 2 kids, so maybe 2 is her limit with that kind of thing.
Why'd she get the second one?
I don't know. I know that she's overdue for one. I know that it's something that she had the intention of doing every 10 years. So like the first one was on her 30th birthday, the second one was on her 40th, and she has one that she's had in the works for the past 6 or 7 years that she was supposed to get on her 50th, which right around that same time was when I got my first tattoo. But I think they're like life lesson markers for her, because the second one that she got was like this symbol from a tarot deck that has this central like intertwining spiral thing, and it's about giving and receiving, and I know that was her mantra for a long time, or something like that was her mantra, just about this idea of like reciprocity across all things. So, you know, she only does it when it's really, really important for her to get this thing. Like, her story about her, I think it was her first tattoo, like, the artist gave her a stress ball to squeeze while she was getting it because she doesn't take pain well, and she couldn't drive afterwards because her squeezy muscles were so worn out.
Wow.
Just from holding onto this ball throughout the whole thing. Yeah.
You said a little earlier, like the pain that's worth concentrating on. And the question popped into my head, is there pain that's worth concentrating on?
Is that the end of the question?
Well, then I know it isn't for me, because then what comes to mind is, you know, from what I've heard, the Buddha said, this world is suffering. That's what this world is. And there's a way out. And when you were talking about the controlled pain and volunteering, I was thinking on a very ethereal level, like that's what we did coming here. All us beings, like, okay, there's hell, and I'm volunteering to go there.
Let's figure this out.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That's a hard question for me, because that's so much of like what I deal with, just in terms of mental health and in terms of anxiety. Like, I have, like, I've called it a death response to very, very little situations that don't actually involve my life. Like, my life is not on the line in so many situations, and the way that I physiologically react to it is as though I were about to die. Like, it's this really visceral, like, I am being attacked by a large predator, and like my body needs to respond in order to get me away from this predator so that I can survive another day. And it'll happen after like stressful conversations with people. It'll happen in traffic. It'll happen like if I don't get a paper in on time, like really ultimately inconsequential things. But like my body fixates on pain and on trauma, whether or not I want to, and whether or not I deem it worthy of my fixation. It just happens, and it's something I'm working on. Yeah.
What's blowing me away is recently, like I'd say within the past 24 hours, noticing how my emotions are energy in my body. If I have a depressed thought or a thought of hopelessness, and like you're saying, it could be really pathetically surface, like, oh, do I have to get up and go to work out right now?
Yeah.
Like, fucking white boy problems, right? And yet the energy in my body is dark, heavy. And if I go, fuck, they're gifting me this. That's so cool. Like, what a gift. All of a sudden, that energy in my body now is light, upbeat, positive. So this is sort of like a left turn down into the rabbit hole, if you will.
Okay.
Because part of what you're talking about in this studying I've been doing, and even this video I saw of this 14-year-old girl who attempted to take her life But then you get into it, right when she took all these pills, she went running to her mom and dad and said, hey, you got to take me to the emergency room now. So obviously she didn't want to take her life. However, I think us as children potentially are taking on survival techniques, like this one group I'm studying with, and the woman who's really running the group, and she's doing a lot of studying. She talks about at 4 months old, infants being so dependent on especially the mother for survival are starting to make choices to appease the parents so that they survive. So,
oh, that's intense.
Yeah, so like if there's a mom who doesn't deal with anger well, and the infant is lashing out like, I'm hungry, and the mom's like, you don't do that with me. The infant's going to cut that off because their survival depends on it. And then we're adults who that programming, we've put that program into ourselves, and now you and I are interacting, and you're not getting angry with me because you think your survival depends on it. But really, for the health of us two adults, it'd be wise for you to get angry at me. Because there's cause and reason for it.
Right, yeah.
And as a healthy adult, I should be able to hear the anger, not take it so personal. But that gets into the worm, the rabbit hole. It's like, wow, how deep does that go?
Yeah. Yeah. God, I had something. It's fascinating that children as young as 4 months old are like learning appropriate behaviors, and like I just assumed that they were all like animal instinct, and like they were just only communicating needs, and that was all they knew how to do. Like,
yeah, because apparently in a healthy mother infant relationship, the mother mirrors that emotion and then responds to it appropriately. So the mother would go like, oh, you're raging. I see rage. Okay, what do you need? You're hungry? Okay. So
in an ideal parental relationship. I'm sure that's how that works out. I was thinking about this, like how our needs as like social creatures drive our behavior, and like how, I mean, that's been so obscured by like I think privilege across gender and race really like we don't mitigate our behavior so much based on like reactions from the world around us, because like we've all been taught how to interact with different people in different ways, and like we've been taught that we get to take up X amount of space, and that really is such a powerful like direction or director of behavior for everyone. But I was just thinking about this video I saw a long time ago where it was a group of rescued chimpanzees. Like it was a sanctuary situation where people were bringing chimps from like like either injured chimps in the wild whose homes had been destroyed, or like a lot of them were like old circus or old like performing chimps, and they just needed to be rehabilitated in some way. But it was this tribe of chimps, and they would be given every day like just a pile of branches with leaves on them that they could eat. Like that was their food. And there was one chimp who she was like a young female chimp who would grab a whole branch and would run off with it and wouldn't share it with the rest of the group. And after a while they stopped grooming her, and that's like a huge like marker of acceptance in the chimp world. And like that's a really significant bonding ritual that they have that kind of like helps solidify each individual member's place in the group. And they cut her off, they like stopped grooming her, and like after a while she stopped running off with the branch. It's like that was their way of being like, all right, if you're not going to be a part of this group, then you really don't get to be a part of this group. And that isolation was too much for her, to the point where she was like going to examine my behavior. And I'm going to, I don't know if her cognitive processing around it was that articulate, but she shifted her behavior around mealtime because she wasn't getting reciprocity from the group. Not that she was participating in that in the first place, but so that isolation, like, and that need to be a part of the social group, like, drove her to like really just stop thinking about herself exclusively, I guess. That's anthropomorphizing it to some extent, but like, I don't know, I think that's reflected in human situations sometimes.
I think absolutely it is. And I have faith in the course of nature, in that self-correcting element in evolution. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a millennial process. Or, it's millions of years. Mm-hmm. And I think it's hard when we see a character trait seemingly rewarded. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, whoa, that doesn't seem in harmony with life. Mm-hmm. Just, for me personally, I think our current president is an example. However, there's people I know through my experience in life who are strong supporters of him, and I respect that they see something that I don't see. Mm. And it's like what you were saying before about projection of what people are going to put on you. Mm. Mm-hmm. Whew, so much going through my head. Like, wait, I had that thought. So, let's see if this works. You mentioned how in traffic, that element of fight or flight rises up. Mm. It could be rising up from a survival habit you learned at 4 months old. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And for me, like, the only logic I see is, and you're doing it, is to take responsibility for everything going on with me, emotionally, physically, mentally. As soon as I project it onto that fucker, or my mom, or whatever, for one, I've given up any hope or power for me to heal myself, because now it's someone else's or something else's responsibility. And there's so much evidence I have of how the same thing could be seen differently, and neither person's wrong. And another example is, I was just talking with my youngest sister about a week ago, and she mentioned, like, she said to me, I don't have the same childhood you have. Like, I got hit with a belt and spanked with a wooden spoon, but I don't feel like it's not a big deal, where for you, there's a lot of suffering you have. And she's like, and that's for you to deal with. And I was like, wow. So it's almost like here we are in the same room, and she's saying, it's warm and comfortable, I love it. And I'm like, I'm freezing fucking cold. You know, and whose responsibility is it to learn to go get a jacket?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. It's just like the way that we like, especially trauma, I think the way that like we take it on and deal with it is so informed by like everything in our life leading up to that trauma, like you know, like if it's something we're used to, or if we just happen to have the tools to deal with it, or engage with it in a way that renders it easier to deal with. Yeah, it just shifts how we like carry it forward, and it just requires so much like self-analysis, I think, like and self-understanding to be able to be like, okay, this is what I'm feeling now, and this is what I need to proceed from this moment in the healthiest or least traumatic way possible. And it's such an evolving thing. I remember something I was going to say earlier. I read somewhere or saw somewhere this, and I don't remember what it related to, but it was this thing kind of about taking on global trauma, where like we are equipped to, like, psychologically, physiologically, emotionally, we are equipped to deal with the suffering of our family group, which is like our nuclear family and our extended family, like essentially like tribal suffering. We are equipped to deal with X amount of suffering from X amount of people, and like with the advent of, especially now, of the internet, but also just like global newscasting, like TV, we see and take on so much more suffering than we're really able to deal with, to the point where like we either like decide that we can't deal with it anymore and we decide to leave the planet of our own accord, or like we just, you know, I mean, some people respond to it by like trying to solve the suffering that they're witness to, or like we abstractify it to the point where it's not something that is even real for us anymore, because we just don't have the capacity for that amount of empathy, and that amount of like internalizing of the suffering of others. Like, we're exposed to however many millions of lives every day, even just by our understanding of like what conditions are like in other parts of the world, you know, or like, you know, yeah.
I think it's even the manner in which the information's given to us. Like this hurricane that just hit South Carolina. It was communicated to me in such a dramatic fashion. You know, like here comes this horror. And then hurricanes have been a part of life forever.
Yeah.
And I would see that from a scientific standpoint, I think it was class 3. Like, yeah, it's a hurricane, but it's not class 5. But the way that drama that it was, you know, so I would feel myself go like, oh.
Yeah. Or like I think something that I think about a lot, just especially with like how much we're able to ask perfect strangers for help through Facebook, even like I just see, you know, all the time, like if you can't show up to this rally, if you for some reason can't call your representative, here's where you can donate money. And it's like the way that I take that on is it's like, oh, this thing that I only just now found out about is my personal responsibility. I am obligated to offer my resources to this cause that I just now found out about, to people that I didn't know existed. Like that it is my personal responsibility to help this person. And I see like fucking 15 of those like in a half hour of scrolling Facebook, you know. And that like that's another way that I take on trauma and like the suffering of other people, like through this network of you know, I mean it's a super legitimate network, and it's cool that people are able to, I mean it's fucked up that people have to, but you know, like this person's hospital bill gets paid through their fundraising posts, you know, but I just take that on so much and so intensely, and I have to like dissociate from it to some extent. And like they're not asking you personally, unless they are, but usually they're not asking you personally. You don't even really have the resources to donate to this kind of thing. You are living your own life. You have your own shit to deal with. You are not going to be the make or break for this person's well-being or this cause, you know. But I think like that tribal mentality of like, because if someone in your family group comes to you personally, or if it's like a dear friend and they're asking you specifically for help, there's this visceral reaction to like, I need to be there for this person, I need to help them with whatever means I have. And like, at least the way I react to these things is like, it's not different from that. Like, I don't really differentiate the situations. Like, it's not different when my dear friend is asking me for help versus when maybe another dear friend is reposting some like fundraising thing. Like, the feeling isn't different, and my reaction to or my urge to like help is not different. And it's totally physiological. It's not a conscious thing at all. Like if I could pick and choose how I react to things and like the amount of emotional energy that I invest in each of these interactions, like I absolutely would save it all for the people that are near and dear to me. But like it's just not something that my body differentiates, because I'm not neurologically equipped for that kind of thing, and I don't think anyone is.
I think we are neurologically equipped for it, and we need to learn to, there's a disconnect, like something didn't get wired straight. With what you just were talking about, I remember when I was doing a lot of sweat equity for the mom and her son, and I asked, like, if you were willing to help, and I meant just spread it out on your network, and you thought, like, I was asking for money, which they were ultimately asking for, but I know getting the word out is part of that.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's like you're saying, there's, I see them both valuable. I appreciated your honesty with your first response of, like you just said, my resources are tapped. I've got just enough for me. I was like, oh wait, that's not what I meant. But I also appreciated the no. There's a couple wealthy people in my life, and like I said, I'm in financial trouble right now, and they both really respectfully said no. And I had no, it could be because of the clarity, so there wasn't any charge from them of like, oh, why are you hassling me, you know. It's just a very kind, friendly, no, that's not what I do. And I think that's the neurological wiring. Do you find that you place, that's someone texted me.
No.
Do you...
Where's the bird? I keep expecting animals to just, I don't know, there's something very like cabin in the woods about this room. I just...
Squirrels live in the roof.
Oh, okay.
And
that's
if you hear running around, that's squirrels. You may see them running outside, and yeah. I love that about this space. Like, I know that I attach my feeling of worth to being able to say yes. And I take it away from myself when I say no.
Yeah. I've had so many opportunities in the past couple years to like practice saying no to things that I felt were really important for me to be doing, but then like ultimately I wasn't able to do them for whatever reason. Like last year, was that last year? Yeah, last year I was supposed to be doing this role at a witch camp, and it came down to like a week before I was gonna go, and I was in the middle of moving, and I had no money, really couldn't afford to take a week off of work to be there, and like I felt like I was letting everyone who I had told I was gonna be there down by not going, and like letting myself down, and like just really going on a tangent about like, oh, you're gonna miss out on just relationship building opportunities, and you're not gonna be as close to these people, and they're gonna like cut you out of their lives because you broke their hearts by not doing this. And that's an aside, but like it also felt really good to be like, I can't do this isn't what I need right now, and this also is more than I can give right now. So like that opportunity to like take care of myself and like also sit with the feeling of like letting someone down, but ultimately understanding that it was in my best interest. Like just really like sitting with the feeling of self-care being difficult but still necessary and important. It was really cool and really hard, but really cool. And to understand that I was capable of doing that was especially good. Like, because I do attach self-worth to like how much I'm able to show up, and like in really specific ways of showing up too, like in terms of like direct action and activism, like there's some amount of glamour attached to the people who are actually like going to protests and like lying down in intersections, or, you know, putting sand in the bulldozers' gas tanks or whatever. Like there's so much glamour wrapped up in like the confrontational, like physical attendance to these protests or like, you know, these actions. And I think that was something I really internalized about activism specifically. It was like, you're not really showing up if you're not in the middle of it, which is really ableist in a lot of ways, because there are people who physically can't show up to these things and like participate in the ways that able-bodied people are able to, which I am able-bodied, so but like that is kind of how I attach value to my own ability, is like, you need to be doing the maximum amount of work, you need to be doing the most exhaustive, most like active role, otherwise you're not helping. Like anything less than a spectacular amount of energy is not energy that bears any worth. So even just like in my reactions to anyone asking for money ever, like I feel like I don't even see how I can be of use sometimes, because it's not the max. It's not, you know, paying off this person's debt in entirety, so therefore it's totally unhelpful. Like just in the extreme aspect of that, I guess.
It's like if we can flip that, because that, to me, and I suffer in it, is so egocentric.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Instead of coming from a place of community and my little bit along with everyone else's is going to be perfect. Thinking like, I'm gonna save the world.
Yeah, the hero mentality. Yeah.
Which goes to that piece, I think, of mattering. We want to matter, and I think it is important to matter. And if we learn that we matter within community, it's like the drop is just as important to the ocean as the rest of the drops creating the ocean.
Well, there's like some piece about visibility too, I think, where like I know this about myself. I need a lot of external validation to feel like I'm really contributing to anything, and like I'm getting better at recognizing my own power and my own like you know, I did this thing, it did help, it didn't, you know, I'm trying to lessen my dependence on external praise. But like I think also in general, a lot of people need external validation to understand that they're doing a good job or that they're helping at all. So I think like it's really hard for me to understand my contribution if I'm not like in a central role around something. Like even just in conducting like rituals, like in witchy circles and in pagan circles, like around conducting rituals, like I downplay my own role in any amount of the co-creation of a ritual if I'm not in like a central speaking role. Because like there are narratives around like what power looks like in any given situation, and it's so easy to downplay the power of like even if it's just like I laid the sticks out for this fire and no one saw me do it, and no one's gonna tell me what a good job I did laying out the sticks for this fire, but like we also really needed a fire, and like the whole like unsung hero thing. But it's easy to devalue the roles that don't get a spotlight put on them.
Okay, if we take a ritual and all the and this is me learning, in your experience of ritual, is there always a leader or maybe a minority of leadership in a productive ritual?
Yes, sort of. Reclaiming is kind of different in the way it constructs ritual, in that and most of the people who are in reclaiming are anarchists, so there's not going to be like one that ideally there's not going to be one like central figure who is kind of calling the shots. But with the vast majority of rituals, there's a small contingent of people who plan it, and usually that same contingent of people are the people who are taking on ritual roles. So it is very like tailored to the needs and the ideas of that group of people, but everything is usually done in consensus, so it's not like one directorial role telling everyone else what to do, and there's very seldom like one focal character in the course of a ritual. Like there will be larger speaking pieces, but most of those are centered around like specific activities in a ritual, like, and they're necessary because someone needs to be directing what's going on and like needs to be communicating to ritual participants what's going on. But I think like just the visibility that's rendered by having a speaking role really like results in this glamorization of it. Because like in more traditional pagan groups, there's like a priestess or a priest, and like we still refer to people who are directing the rituals as they go as priestesses, but it's not the same as like the idea of the Old English priestess who like is the one funneling the magic through her body, and she's the only way that like this divine energy gets onto the planet, kind of a thing. It's not like that. It's not like hierarchical at all. But it still is like deemed with that kind of significance, although like the ritual in general is made collectively, like from the very beginning. Like there's the story that's set up by a group of people. There's the ritual itself that's set up by a group of people, and then like all the participants, whether or not they know what's going on from the beginning, are creating the ritual. It's not something that can happen without everyone working at it.
Do you think there's a propensity for leaders to be unconscious that they only lead because there's people willing to follow? In essence, their power is coming from others.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think this is probably pretty difficult to lead if you don't have followers, isn't it?
Right, but what I mean, and again, I can use myself for an example, that when I find myself in a role of leadership, it takes me consciousness to keep in mind that one, it's not more important than the other, because it only exists because of the other. And therefore the other should be acknowledged along with my own acknowledgement I'm receiving.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ideally, that would be the case. I mean, I think in the greater political world, we have a tendency to take leadership for granted. Like we take, systems of power for granted, and we just assume that this position of power exists inside of a vacuum, because we just don't know how to interact with it in any other way.
So in ritual, is part of the ritual, or have you experienced rituals where part of the ritual is an acknowledgement of all participating in the ritual? So you have your focused leaders, but is there at some point in the ritual where like, all right, so that hierarchy is dissolved in that moment, right?
Yeah. In I mean, there are so many different formats that rituals can take, and there are for sure like rituals where like there's one person who kind of guides everyone into this place of like there's this thing called aspecting, where you take on the energy of if it's one person, you would like take on the energy of like a specific like elemental being, or like a deity. Like people often aspect gods and goddesses to try to like bring that presence into a ritual space. But we've done a bunch of rituals before where it's like everyone participating aspects. Like we did a school of salmon, and it was kind of with the intention of like allowing the voices of the salmon people to speak to a central human listener. Or like there's a ritual called the Council of All Beings, where like people will aspect a like an animal or like a plant, and they will speak from the place of that, and that opens up like the direction of the ritual to everyone participating, and it takes away, because it feels like it's, because I think priestessing is really about like energy direction, like and it's important. Like if you have a specific intention with a ritual, you need to have something that directs the energy of the crowd, because like it could fucking fall apart if there wasn't that container set up, and there really needs to be someone to guide everyone to this specific point in the ritual, or like to this specific activity, or like to kind of hold it in a container. But with like group aspecting rituals, it takes the speaking role and the role of direction away from one person and opens it up. And I don't think it completely, I don't know. It's difficult to say that there's like hierarchy in these rituals, because there's not like this power thing in reclaiming rituals. Often like it happens unconsciously sometimes, but I think like aspecting rituals do kind of eliminate that to some extent, because it's like it's opening up the space to allow in whatever needs to be there from whoever needs to bring it into being. So yeah, it takes the power of direction somewhat out of the hands of the person who brought it there in the first place. But I've also like done some amount of work. Like we did this thing in a camp exercise where we were like working with tarot cards, and we were trying to scry this meaning out of it to like describe roles. We were working with honeybees, like that was our story. We were just focusing on the life cycle and the like the culture of honeybees, and how they have this one central, it's the queen. They have a queen. They have this one thing that holds the whole colony together, and her role is critical. As are the roles of the worker bees and the soldiers and the nurse bees. You know, they all have critical roles, and like that. It's not, I don't know, it feels anthropomorphizing to say that it's these power structures are like, you know, power structures are inherent to their lives, but like they wouldn't be able to survive if they didn't have a queen, and if they didn't have the workers. Like it's a totally codependent thing. But so we were working with that story, and we came up with this phrase that was like, the gist of it was basically like, there isn't a need for struggle of power if all the roles being held are equally acknowledged and valued. Like, the idea being that the queen is not necessarily fed more than the workers just because she's the only one doing this specific job. And that's kind of the thing with like priestessing, I think, is like the director of a ritual is not being given more out of this than everyone else there, because the priestess on their own wouldn't be able to create this ritual without everyone else there. Like, yeah.
Have you been a priestess ever?
Yes. Yeah. It's a fluctuating role at witch camps. Like, there tend to be a group of people where most of them are drawn from, because those are the people that are comfortable in speaking roles and feel like they it's volunteer based, especially in the camps that I've been to. Like, it's not like these are the people that are allowed to be priestesses because they have this, they've paid their dues in this way, and they've done this work, and they've pulled up their bootlaces, whatever. Like, yeah, we've for sure done that.
Do you think you held that place well?
I'd like to think I did.
Well, just like without the judgment of others outside of you. Like, you don't need agreement from anyone outside of you. Just your own personal assessment.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, there's always this work that I'm doing in roles of great visibility, because I have so much shit around taking up space where I feel like I should not be taking up space, because there may be other people who need it more or something. Like, I always have a lot of guilt around taking up space in that way. So anytime I'm in a priestessing role, there's some amount of like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is too much. I'm taking up too much time and too much energy. I shouldn't be doing this. And like, am I holding this role well? Am I making it about this power dynamic? And then there's also like the rush and the glamour of being the person directing a certain aspect of the ritual that's just, intoxicating. Like,
but this whole, isn't there also the positivity of channeling this ritual?
Yeah. And that's like, I think that's another thing, like working with the bee metaphor again. Like, a worker bee is not going to be able to do the same thing that a queen bee is going to do. So like but it's also a role not to be devalued. Like, not everyone is going to be able to priestess. Like, not everyone has the right skills. Not everyone has the desire to do so, like not everyone can hold this role. And that doesn't mean that the people who are holding this role are any better or more significant than the people who aren't. It's just like, this is a job for people who can do it, not for people who would like to do it but can't, or whatever. I don't know.
Okay, this just popped into my head, and it's come up a couple times, I think, in this past month, of women who experienced judgment from just wanting to be a mom. And they were feeling judged, like, really? That's your aspiration? Wow, that's weak.
Yeah.
I don't know, I guess it's relative, because if we, like you're saying, if we come to this place of life as a ritual, like I was even thinking of asking you this, can you bring your experience in ritual and everything you've been talking about, of what's the term for that ritual, like with the salmon and the bees?
Aspecting.
Yeah. So if you take that, can you bring that experience into the experience of traffic jam? And it's a ritual. And like, all these people, and you're one of them, are now doing this ritual called traffic jam.
Right.
And can you do it in a manner in which it's productive?
Yeah. Well, I've come up with all kinds of weird things to quiet my anxiety when it's not helpful, but that was one of the first ones that I arrived at myself, because like, it's so easy when you're in traffic to blame your lateness or your frustration with needing to be in the car longer than you thought on everyone else who's there. Like, you are not traffic. Traffic is everyone around you, right?
Yes.
So that was a huge thing for me to be like, I'm another car on this road. I too suck at merging. Like, this is I'm participating in this. I'm a participant. And it's so easy to externalize it because I'm the only one feeling the frustration that I am feeling right now. Like, this is my thing. But I'm also surrounded by people who also don't want to be stuck in traffic. Like we're all creating this.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, there's an element of, I just forgot the word. Like, a group participation is creating a realm of energy. And can one be in that realm as a positive conduit to help transform what's a whole lot of negative energy, potentially. Don't know for sure.
Maybe everyone's really happy to be going 20 miles on 880. I don't know.
Well, 20's lucky. What about, like, 0? Yeah, like, could... And it kind of goes back to that whole thing of perspective. You know, like two people in a room, same room. Can one change one's experience?
Yeah. I'm trying. Yeah, God, I try all the time to change my perspective. And I think part of my own personal practice is just compassion. Like, I don't, you know, there are people and organizations in the world that I don't give any of my compassion to. But
I can see that's kind of doesn't sit well. It's not 100%. Like, you look like you're a little guilty about that.
I mean, I'd like to be all peace and love about everything, but I feel like I know too much. I just, like, it's so, like, I know so many people and some people who are very dear to me that kind of believe in this meritocracy where, like, if you do good to other people, they will also do good to you. Like, if you are kind and polite, you will inherently receive kindness and politeness, and they are resentful because they feel like, this is the energy I'm putting out into the world, I expect to be getting it back. Like, they feel entitled to it because they put so much of that energy into the world, and it's not helpful. From what I've seen, it's not helpful to, like, it's counteractive to be resentful that you are not receiving love back after putting all this love out into the world. And, like, are you really putting love out into the world if you're resentful of the people that aren't giving it back to you, you know? So, like, just, like, raising that shield, because, like, I mean, like, current political administration, I don't feel like I have bandwidth to give compassion to that. I can look at a situation and understand how it got there, but that doesn't mean I have to invest. Like, I don't have to excuse anything, because all that's gonna do is just make me angry that they're not also, like, giving compassion to people who need it, you know? Like there's only so much leverage I can give to folks who aren't going to reciprocate my understanding and my flexibility around their shit. Like, I'm not going to be fed by giving compassion to every relationship that I encounter. And that was a huge thing for me. Like leaving an emotionally abusive friendship was like, I am never going to get the amount of energy back that I'm putting into this, because this relationship is just a black hole, and I'm going to dump myself into it, and I'm just going to be gone after a while. I'm going to have nothing left, and like, you know, I don't know. So I try to have compassion in most situations, and I also have to acknowledge my limits, because I would rather have reserves than become resentful.
And I really love the phrase, love your neighbor as yourself. Because for me, it teaches me, part of the statement's existence is me learning to love myself. So, like, if I hate myself, well, love my neighbor as I love myself means hate my neighbor, because that's how I'm loving myself. So to the extent that I can love myself, I can love my neighbor. And that's where I think for you to make your choice with this individual is a choice of loving oneself. Absolutely important in loving thy neighbor.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. The whole, like, I don't 100% agree with it, but the whole, like, you have to learn to love yourself before you can love anyone else. Like, that just, like, and that goes back to, like, prioritizing self-care, even if it's uncomfortable, over all things. Because you need to be there. You need to be able to give if you are to give anything. Like, you can't show up intending to feed someone with an empty bowl. So, like, you need to make sure that you are fed first. And even the whole, like, make sure you put your oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on someone else, because you can't help anyone if you're passed out from lack of oxygen. Like, you know. Yeah. It's complicated.
It is. I think our emotions are a continual means of staying on course. Like, when I'm unhappy, okay, I'm off course. When I'm happy, okay, I'm not at goal, but I'm on course.
Yeah. I think with like emotional responses to things, just like taking that. I mean, it's difficult for someone who's not neurotypical like myself, because my emotions are often.
Who's not what?
Neurotypical. It's a way of saying, like, not normal, because that's a charged term, but, like, you know, someone who deals with.
I understand what you're saying with neurotypical.
Mental health issues, whatever, like, my emotional responses are not appropriate often to the energetic situation I happen to find myself in, but still, like, just using that as, like, a guideline, like they're bumpers on a bowling lane, and like if I hit the thing, then that is like a signal to me to like redirect in another direction, or like, you know, to stop and like examine why I'm feeling this way and what needs to be done in order to get me back to like a base point, or like back to homeostasis, you know, like what do I need to do to balance this out. And it's not a static thing, it's like a consistent, you know, it's an action. It's like active. Balance is active. It's not something that, you know, it's not just about like having two blocks on a stick on another stick just to keep it, like, it's not a static thing. It's about moving the things in order to keep stable, or some semblance of stability.
Well, I think part of why I wanted to do this with you is I think you're someone who is, along with a very strong group of people. I was looking for an academic term. Re-examining normal self and the vocabulary that is being used.
Yeah.
I love every time I hear some form of communication that establishes our emotions are normal. So, what's the term used?
Neurotypical.
Neurotypical.
Yeah.
What I love is I feel that is a temporary phrase because the norm is whatever the moment is. There's a reason I'm feeling what I'm feeling. There is a reason why you're feeling what you're feeling.
Yeah.
And I think, again, like with my oven analogy and burning off that which isn't really me, I have some stories that I need to let go of in order to love myself and love my moment as it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and like taking that as like a piece of a journey, and like not, like, especially not, you know, pathologizing it, which is, it gets difficult when we get into like issues of mental health, but like it just upsets me so much when I have a friend who is hurting, like especially if one of my female socialized friends is apologizing for crying. It just breaks my heart because this emotional response has been pathologized to the point where my friend feels like they need to be sorry for feeling, and especially for feeling with any amount of visibility. And I think a lot of that is just like not not wanting to hurt, which is understandable. That's reasonable. Like that's I think that's one of the biggest like motivators for balance, is like, I'm hurting, I would like not to hurt. Like it's a motivator for redirection, but it's also like it's just, I don't know, it's just heartbreaking to see someone feeling like a burden for feeling.
I'm just now at 56 years old. Look what you have to look forward to.
Right behind you.
Wow, you're doing way better. What was I going to say about feeling? Oh. Becoming comfortable with my discomfort. So just a couple weeks ago, a friend of mine's going through a really trying time. And she was sharing this with me. And I wanted to fix it.
Yeah.
And there was no way I can fix it. It's a stupid concept. So all I had was my, and help you, like, you want more?
Oh, this is fine.
Okay. We'll grab it. All I had was my discomfort at not knowing what to say, not being able to help, nothing I could do. and
Yeah.
being at peace with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is on the surface seems diametrically opposed. Discomfort and at peace, those aren't. So I heard this one monk describe his experience of joy. It's like the depths of the ocean. And on the surface maybe a raging storm. And the waters are churning, but deep down underneath doesn't even, maybe a ripple. There's nothing really.
Yeah. I feel that. Something that my mom is really into, and I think it comes from a specific teaching of Buddhism. I don't know though, but it's rooted in Buddhism. Is this like naming of situations and emotions and like a response to situations as either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. And it's about like not imbuing the situation with an inherent feeling, but it's more about like just noting our reaction to it in a way that's not like stigmatic in some way, or it kind of removes it from like objectivity. Like when we name a situation, like, that was fucked up, like we are removing the responsibility of that reaction from ourselves and like planting something on that. And I do think that there are situations that are objectively fucked up, just as an aside, but like it's about going like, unpleasant, like this is my reaction to that situation. And it's like an observational way of like interacting with feeling and like interacting with our responses to situations, which I think is really cool. And it's also not something I personally practice, but I think it's cool.
Do you think you're personally practicing it in your own way?
Probably.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. I mean, I try to recognize subjectivity in most situations. And I try to acknowledge like how my history and how my socialization and my privilege like influence my responses to things. But I'm deeply analytical and I just want to analyze every fucking thing that ever happens to me ever. So that's like kind of where that comes from. And it doesn't necessarily like shift my feeling at all, but it just helps to have kind of like a framework through which to look at something.
Okay, but don't you have experiences in your ritual practice where there is no cognitive explanation?
No.
Really? You understand everything that's experienced within a Wicca ceremony?
Not everything, but I have a hard time turning that off. Like, I don't want to explain everything, but I do want to analyze everything. I want to, like, it's less about building a theory or a hypothesis than it is about just, like, understanding particulates of something, I think. Like, and that is, I mean, my interactions with magic are something that I, like, compromise pretty deeply with, you know, my more science-minded brain, you know, like, so there's a lot of ritual scenarios where I just, like, try to be in feeling, but I do think that, like, that's something that I find is a barrier to a lot of how I experience rituals, is this analyzing impulse.
And yet you're a good priestess.
Yeah.
So it's not
Yep.
so, and
Yeah.
you know, it's not such a challenge that it even makes you a mediocre priestess.
No. Yeah. Well, I hope not.
Well, I would say that you're probably a great priestess in that moment, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, like, and so you are.
Yeah.
It's like your cue right now, your cue. If you get angry at me, you're still cue.
Presumably, yeah.
Well, you are.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah. Yeah.
without our analytical mind. Attempting to challenge everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like the challenging aspect could just go on and on and on and on and on and on.
And it often does.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe it is divine, because I do believe divine is eternal.
Hmm.
Maybe the challenge is part of the divine.
I mean, I think that's how a lot of people choose to look at it. Like, yeah. Like this, I mean, the struggle of life itself it's divine, and it is so written in so many creationist texts. Like it is divine will that we are put on this earth to suffer, to experience suffering, like, and it's forever. Yeah, it's comforting
Now, did you
to
just
believe that
say
there's purpose.
that you know some creationist stories where in essence they say this is hell and you're here forever? Get used to the suffering, because
I mean, suffering with purpose, I think, is comforting. Like, to reason it out. Like, okay, I'm really hurting, but there's a reason. Not like I'm just hurting, you know, for no gain, for no, like, there's no intention behind my hurt. It's just hurt. I think it's just really difficult to, like, exist in that kind of vacuum, like, where there's not a reason for what's happening, you know, in any situation.
do you have a goal in mind? Like the goal of suffering?
No,
The reason for
not
suffering?
me personally, no. I mean, I think a lot, on a global scale, a lot of suffering is pointless and preventable. Like, yeah, I mean, there's many schools of thought around that, isn't there? Like the whole idea of enlightenment as a result of suffering, or like, you know, the vintage Christian idea of like self-flagellation and like bodily suffering as a way to get into heaven, kind of a thing, like which I guess like arguably is another form of enlightenment, but the idea that like suffering yields like peace beyond death, that's the big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I don't
like even the phoenix from the ashes.
Yeah. The idea that something greater will come after suffering. But I believe that is really like internal, personal suffering versus like group and like systemic hurt, you know? Yeah, I don't know. But I guess like the term "what doesn't kill you makes you stronger" could be applied to group scenarios too. So yeah, I don't know.
I heard a stand-up comedian say something along the lines with that, like eventually there is something that does kill you.
You'll find it. You'll find it.
Yeah. That analogy is only good for a certain point. And then that right. Killed him. That got him.
Yeah. Right. I mean, even like that just made me think of you know, like you're looking for something and you're like, oh, I found this thing the last place I looked, and like it's technically it's always the last place you look, right?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So there's something that's going to kill you after a while.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of finding it in the last place that you look, right?
I do have hope that we have chosen this life for a reason, in this creation of immense suffering.
Mm-hmm.
There's a way to live happily.
Mm-hmm.